From the center of the galaxy, this is ForceCenter, a show about Star Wars, pop culture, and the ultimate adventure, life itself. For myself, the adventure in life right now is being in Bergen, Norway. It is 8 p.m. here, so I have a beer. I'm very excited to be here. I'm Joseph Scrimshaw.
I'm Ken Napzok. It's 11:20 a.m. at the time of this recording. I have water, and I finished my fruit juice, but I'm excited for what Joseph's bringing to the show.
And I have a very hot mug of coffee, although I wish I was drinking what Joseph was.
It's a juicy IPA, which is upsetting to say, but fun to drink. I'm enjoying a great family trip here in Norway, somewhat near, not really, but vaguely near the filming location of Hoth. So I feel like I'm having a little bit of a Star Wars adventure and got up real early this morning to watch The Acolyte. So excited to discuss it. Let's just dive right in because there is a lot to discuss in this series finale. We don't know which it will be. Season 1, Episode 8, titled The Acolyte, directed by Hanella M. Culpepper, written by Jason Micallef. Both of this writer and director team has been working on The Acolyte throughout the broadcast seasons. We've discussed a little bit about their background as writers and directors before. So let's get right into the show. I want to be sure to keep going because there's a possibility that the Norwegian light will fade and I will just become darker and darker and darker. Much like the episode itself, very dark. So let's get into this. We talked a little bit off air to take some temperature, but now we're going to share with our wonderful listening and viewing audience. Jennifer, what was your overall reaction to this big finale? Do you love it, like it, struggle with it, a mix? Where'd you go?
I loved it. I have watched it now almost 3 times, and each time I'm finding new things to appreciate. It just left me feeling happy and yet also sad that season 2 has not been announced. I just thought that there were so many great performances. This episode looked the best, as we talked about off air. And there's just so many things to appreciate and lots of themes, which we're going to dive into.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ken, how did you feel about this episode?
I'll start with things I like, Joseph. I thought, Jennifer, you said it, and I really am with you on this. I thought this episode sounded the best, felt the best. I have been I feel at times too vocal about what these shows look like, which sometimes is just not fair to the show, or it's how I'm taking it in. They're not going to look as good when you're on your iPad on a treadmill versus a theater experience. That's on me, not the show. But this episode had some of my just most favorite, like shot moment, like cinematic. You know that word cinematic? It's up there with gravitas, which I will use later here. It was cinematic. It felt big. It felt like I was truly in the Star Wars world that the other episodes had at times, but lacked in other moments for me. So I really love that. I think this had, we'll talk about action, one of the best lightsaber fights I've seen. I think it surpassed what the show set out to do and delivered in the first, in episode 4 or 5. What was that, 5? 5, which was great stuff and was celebrated rightly. This one, for me, even surpassed it. Not that you need to rank them. It's not a contest. We're going to talk more about this character because I don't like the character, but I love the performance. David Harwood shows up. People were waiting for him to show up. He shows up as Senator Ray in court. Come on. And brought some good old-fashioned, as I said, gravitas to the series. I love what he brought. I love the energy, and I want more of him. It actually made me go, where was he in episode 2? I would have loved just this running plot of the politics and the Jedi of it all. That's that. We'll get into it. I think, though, there were some thoughts that I had that this finale was a little bit all over the place in terms of plot, which, again, I look at just how this was structured, what they were asked to do. Those are more industry conversations that just aren't even relevant to what we do here at ForceCenter. We try to engage with what's there. But as someone, you don't corner me at a bar and say, why did that character do that? Because I kind of don't care. I look thematically. Well, the themes, that was a thematic choice from the writers, creators, actors. That's why you look at it that way. The plot of why they did that, I have a lot of plot questions, right? Like, even like, I got it. The hamster, Basil, I'm not being disrespectful. The Basil, I don't know why he made Soul crash. I understand Soul's about to maybe shoot May, but couldn't nudge him, talk to him, tell him. You just made him crash. I have those little things, and then there was a ping pong of decisions. I choose this. Wait, I choose this. I choose that. And I kind of felt lost at times. But the final thing, sorry, maybe I had too much coffee this morning. Didn't have some Norwegian beer. But I do. I have to remind myself that the first viewing of Last Jedi, I came out of it, stood amongst friends, and went, I don't know if I liked it. I don't think I disliked it, but I don't know where I stand on it yet. And time and viewings and rumination about how this connected to me as a Star Wars fan is how I move forward on my love of The Last Jedi. We had a long journey with the prequels. There's something out of balance between me and this show right now, and I have to try to own it, have to try to figure out why, because this show presented a lot of great things. I would love and still love discussing the show. I wasn't as pulled in by Ahsoka. Other people were. Some people, Jen included, you are pulled in by the show. I'm not. That doesn't mean we're both wrong or both right. It's just what it is. I have to sit with it. I have to try to understand it. I'd have to try to see where I'd want it to go, because this challenged me a little bit. And being challenged as a fan is not bad. That's not a bad thing. But this challenged me in a bigger, real-world way that I'm still trying to unpack. But hey, the lightsabers were cool.
Well said, and lots to unpack. And let's just talk about the most controversial thing right off the top. I think Basil's just a poor decision maker. I think that's the bottom line. I think really, when you look at it, like he could have just went and screamed directly at Saul in the previous episode. He could have been trades, just screaming and pointing, and he hit a bunch of other stuff. And then, maybe Saul was gonna try to clip May to slow her down. But when I watched Basil do that, I felt like this would be like if you were in a car going 90 and like, this is legitimately dangerous, so I'll pull the handbrake even though I'm not the one driving.
Thank you.
Basil, I don't think you improved on your situation. But
yes,
it honestly didn't bug me, because it felt like maybe that's just who this little dude is.
I think so.
Doesn't handle stress well. Yeah. I really, really loved parts of it. In particular, I did think the lightsaber fight was phenomenal, and I think beyond just Star Wars, it has action as an important part of its ingredients. This was such a duel. Episode 5 was this amazing, spectacular battle going back and forth between all these people, and this was a phenomenal one-on-one duel between Saul and Chimere and their perspectives and their choices, and built to this great truth of Saul is such an amazingly accomplished Jedi. You can't defeat him with a weapon. Like, literally, you, Chimere, cannot defeat him with the weapon. And I thought the lightsaber fight was not only phenomenal action, but drove that thematic point home in a beautiful way. So I love the action. I think this episode is absolutely philosophically rich, and we're going to spend a lot of time talking about all the themes and ideas and diving into it. And I think some of the motivations, to me, in a writerly way, are inviting us to go, ooh, I think she wants this. I think she wants this. Does she really? So I feel like some of the motivations are there to be philosophically rich. There were some parts of this that challenged me, not really this episode, but kind of where's the whole show going to go? Star Wars has a history with Lucas setting the tone of having it be a morality tale that does kind of come to the point. It's not quite 80s He-Man, where He-Man comes out and tells you the lesson. it wants you to believe something. And I felt like for me, the way this season of story ended, I think the show definitely did have some things to say, but it also just felt like this really amazing, the truths we cling to depend greatly on our own point of view as a show. It felt like, as a show, it's almost like a Rorschach test. And we can look at the text, and we can discuss and debate, well, May said this and she looked like this, but she took this action, so I believe that this is what the show is saying, morally or philosophically. But I also just feel like at some point I just need to embrace that this show is affecting people on a really deep level. And so we can discuss what this show is saying, but maybe the power of this show is partially it's showing us our own opinions, perspectives, biases, truths. What truths are we clinging to, and how is the show celebrating that, giving us a catharsis, or maybe pressing on a nerve? And I think that's so important, because I think this episode of ForceCenter and ForceCenter in general is not thumbs up, thumbs down.
Mm-hmm.
Was it good or bad? Should you watch it? Shouldn't you? It is about, for me, working through why do we react to the art the way we do? What do we think the art is trying to say? And to me, it's very important, to be honest, that it challenged me. And the main way it challenged me is I felt like Star Wars can often go very, very dark, but usually it has a glimmer of hope. And while there might be more hope in a second season, I felt like the glimmers of hope in this episode, in this season, were relatively small. And I was really challenged by that, because that feels very different to me than the normal Star Wars experience. I'll say one last thing and move on to bigger discussion here. The arc with the Last Jedi conversation has been amazing over the years, because I feel to this day some people who love it love the criticism of the Jedi, love the criticism of being a hero, love the comparisons from DJ, that both sides are kind of the same. Where I feel like the point of Last Jedi is it says all these challenging things. It challenges everything you think you know about Star Wars, but in the final act validates, yes, there is a difference between freedom fighters and authoritarian government. Yes, the Jedi are needed. Yes, they need to take physical action because their power matters. And yes, they need to be heroes because people need hope and the galaxy needs somebody to look up to sometimes. So Last Jedi is a great example for me of a story that really criticizes, but ends on that note of hope, even though very bleak. It's, hundreds of people get whittled down to a handful, and many of our heroes die, and a son almost kills his mother. Incredibly dark film, but it still has that hope. And I think for me, there is hope in this, but it's very small in that challenged me. Jennifer, any thoughts on what Ken and I are saying from your perspective?
I have a lot of thoughts, but I will save most of it. For me, what I appreciated about this show was that it felt like a more accurate reflection of our heroes in our world, and that they make mistakes and that they can do bad things. And I think if we do get a season 2, I think we will get the mirror image of what the darkness that we're seeing. We're going to get the light in season 2. That's what I'm hoping. But for me, it just felt like I was finally being heard in a Star Wars series, which is kind of funny because Star Wars has always represented hope for me. It has gotten me out of some terribly dark times throughout my life. But now I wanted something that reflected how I feel and what I see in the world, and it was here, and it felt just very I don't know, it hit me in a different way. It felt much more emotional in that sense. But yeah, I guess it's so funny. I never even thought the fact that there was no hope. I don't know. I think it's so fascinating because I felt uplifted after each episode.
Mm-hmm.
And this episode, I felt like, wow, like I didn't even miss that there was no hope. Why is that? We're going to talk about that in this episode.
Yeah, and we'll get into the depth of it. But for me, I think like there are glimmers of hope. I think, Osha and May did come around to seeing each other and wanting to give each other what they need. I thought that was beautiful and hopeful, that they both sacrifice, something to try to give the other what they want. I thought that was very hopeful, and their story is both, wide open. So I thought that was hopeful. I think Vernestra going to Yoda, we will talk about a lot. I think that was hopeful because we don't know exactly where those stories are going to go. But for me, those were the two big moments of hope, and they were both wrapped up in, well, will we get a season 2? Because this in some ways felt like Empire Strikes Back if we don't know if Return of the Jedi is ever going to come out. And that is not about the show. That's about the business. And that's the other thing I want to say up at the top here. For me, it left a few too many unanswered questions for my taste. I thought it told its story. This was the Acolyte, the book of Soul, maybe the book of Brendok. It resolved what happened on Brendok. It resolved Soul. For now, it resolved how the Sith are hidden. The only person who knows about it, Vernestra, is dealing with it in her own way. It was very purposeful in the way it ended with, two sort of master and apprentice, Chimere and Osha, and then Vernestra and Yoda, both kind of looking forward to what's next. So I thought there was a lot of resolution. But, the exact story of Osha and May's creation, there's the tease of who taught us that rhyme. So it feels like there's even more to that story. How will Vernestra and now Yoda, resolve the knowledge of the Sith? We got the tease that there is history between Vernestra and Chimere, but that is also left for a theoretical season 2. The mystery of Chimere being a Jedi from a long time ago, exactly what that is about and how that's possible. What the connection to Kylo Ren's theme music is, even if it is just a thematic. Plagueis was great. That was amazing. We'll talk about it. But that was also hey, tune in if there's a next time. Mother Coral is great, but there's also, she's out there that she could return. I don't feel like we ever got an answer to what the Ascension truly was, which makes a difference to me about, Soul obviously screwed up, but, what the Ascension actually is would help me process the entire story. Anyway, point being, I'm not really dinging the show for that, for this list of questions. For me, I'm dinging the current state of streaming and the powers that be. I feel like the powers that be, in my opinion, should either, just risk your money and greenlight 3 seasons and let creators tell their whole damn story and let us, the audience, be really excited on discussions like this about what's coming in season 2. Or ask your creators to wrap things up a little bit more, because the business of the industry, the powers that be, the money people, are putting creators in the position to create shows that have a bunch of breadcrumbs. So we, the fans, will go, please, please, please. And I just think it would be better if they just invested in saying it's 1 season period, really wrap up your story, or, hey, you got all these seasons, so we're not left wondering if all of these really interesting threads will ever be followed up on.
Yeah, maybe we'll have that state of the industry conversation outside of the walls of an Acolyte Report there. Final thought from me before we dive in, because we're going to keep saying we're going to dive in soon and extend this intro. I think the show, I think of Nico and the Velvet Underground. I'll be your mirror, reflect what you are, in case you don't know. This show definitely does that. And Jen, it put a mirror up to you and it connected with you in a different way. And I want to acknowledge it. ForceCenter works on the strength of the 3 of us bringing our own views and experiences, but we're all original trilogy kids. But let's not hide the fact that Joseph and I grew up as men in the 80s, boys in the 80s, who were told hope is ours to lose, where Jen, I think you had a different experience where hope is something you need to find. And I think that probably is one of the reasons I think you're connecting to the series so powerfully. I think I don't want to speak for you here. That's literally not my point. But I'm hearing that from you of a different path to this same moment here on this show with the 2 of us. So excited to hear more.
Oh, so you said it so beautifully. That's exactly what I've been trying to say, is that people of color are often not afforded the same type of hope. We don't get the same type of second chances. We are held up to different standards. It's like all these things. And this show was just really did that for me. One thing about the business, I believe that there's going to be a season 2. And the reason why is, I could be totally wrong, but Leslie Headland, I read an interview with her and she was like, Chimere was not supposed to feature as much in this season.
Right.
And so I wrote him in. I was like, what? This season? So we know that she said, I'm going to put everything on the table, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
I think that they've been like, we're going to hopefully give you a second season. Why they have not announced it is the problem, because I think if they announced that, I think everyone would be like, oh yes, I can't wait to tune in, right? Instead of like what you're talking about, this kind of longing, like, oh, please don't take this away from us, like you did with Willow. Like, that's why Game of Thrones hit so hard, is we knew that they were going to pick up. But
up until season 3 or 4, HBO did not commit until the end of each season.
That's right. You're right.
Which is, again, so that's why it's the state of the industry conversation.
Yeah.
And again, we're talking about suits on their yachts, not wanting to lose their yachts. I get it, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, Leslie Headland, I think, has mentioned a second season in every interview she's given. Like, there are plans. Clearly, there's a story, and she and her fabulous team want to tell that story. And I want Lucasfilm to decide whether or not we get to hear that story as quickly as possible. Because for me, it's a different conversation. Is this the final note? Is this what this show has to say about the Jedi? That it ends on a beat of Vernestra covering it up and then having a mystery conversation with Yoda. Is that the final word? Or is this an ellipsis and we get to have fun thinking about it? That's an entirely different message. Again, imagine Empire Strikes Back ends and you don't even know if they will make Return of the Jedi. It changes the flavor of the thing to me. All right. Let's dive into the big picture ideas, because I do think that the ideas going on in this were really, really exciting. Jen, for you, what were the big ideas that rose to the top that affected you?
I don't even know where to begin. There were so many. I was like, duality, destiny, reflection, mirroring. But before we got on this chat here, we were talking, and I had an epiphanic moment, thanks to what you were saying, Joseph, where I realized what this show is doing is addressing the idea of being a subordinate and being a dominant. And the thing that I've been learning in school is like that all of us are at different areas of our life a subordinate, meaning that we are like a minority, or we don't have as much power or agency, and in some areas we are the dominant, right? A part of the dominant group. And this can be for if related to religion, it can be related to your sexual orientation. There's all different ways of where you can be in the dominant group, even if you are a quote unquote minority. And so here for us, the Jedi have always been in this kind of like subordinate position, not so much in the prequels, obviously, but like certainly for the original trilogy, they were the subordinate. The Empire was the dominant. And this show flips that, and the Jedi, they're kind of subordinate at times, and it's like every single person keeps shifting their position, and it's really challenging. And the best thing that we can do, that I've been learning, is to reflect on your own experience as the dominant. And I think what happens in this season is that the Jedi are not reflecting. The only person that really is reflecting is Indara, who's like, oh, we shouldn't be doing this. Hey, everyone, this is a bad idea. And she's aware of her privilege, right? And so everyone else, though, is acting kind of selfishly to maintain their position of dominance, from Sol to Vernestra Rowe, right? And it's like they're trying to gain control. But that's really the biggest theme that I'm seeing throughout this whole season, which is really fascinating. What a gigantic theme to tackle. And I think that they did it really well.
Yeah. And I relate to that from the perspective of various real life situations that I find myself in, where, you're talking to one friend group, you leave the room, or you don't even leave the room, you go to another corner and you talk to a different friend group, and depending on the dynamic, it will switch. Ken and I had the funny experience in London with our partners, Grace and Sarah, kidding us about people kindly stopping to talk to us at Star Wars Celebration. And Ken and I are both aware, like, watch, we are going to get 5 feet away from Star Wars fans. We're back to low status. Those dynamics play out in incredibly deep, meaningful ways, and in just like silly ways that don't matter that much. But I think you're right to point out how often we find ourselves in those situations where we are shifting. And the Jedi at this point in time do have a lot of power, and they are invested in holding on to it. And I think that's a lot of Chimera and the Sith's game of, as soon as a conversation might become about something awful that Chimera did or believes, he's really good at shifting it back to, let's talk about you. So that moment where maybe in this moral debate, I'm going to become low status because I murdered everyone. He shifts it into, I'm high status because actually let's talk about the mistakes that you made. So he's really playing those games that I think you're talking about that are really emotionally effective. And I think, the audience wants to jump in and agree with him, so powerfully, because what he's saying is true. But then there's also that part where he's like, yeah, but you changed the subject from why you murdered people and why you think that's okay. It is really, really fascinating. And I think a really great lens to look at the show from. Ken, what are your thoughts?
I agree with you on that. And Jen, agree. You're the dominant in this theme discussion right now. Okay. No, I think it's well said, Jen, because and how even the Jedi many times don't reflect, but how, when you walk into a room, you need to take stock of what's going on in the room. Like I once had a friend who was, I'm the life of the party. Everyone loves me. I said, have you asked everyone? Have you gone to the room and asked everyone if they like you being loud and obnoxious? Because I don't know. And all through the series, again, this is a series, we tap the wall. It's about duality. That's been clear and stated in many interviews. But Mother Anastaea's trailer comment of this is about power and who has the right to use it, to wield it, and what you do with it, and how that can change, the dynamic can change, and how I think this is a tragedy, as we said last week, and everyone in the punditry world has said, it is an absolute tragedy where so many people with good intentions maybe aren't understanding their position and their position of power, and so that changes the results of what they do with their power, or colors some of their decision making. Jen, I think that's a great starting point for an episode that just presents almost too many things. Like I say that in a complimentary way of just like, I stopped taking notes after a while because I was just like, it's decision fatigue, theme fatigue is almost hitting in because there's a lot of things at play, but it all kind of filters back into that.
Yeah, I think that's very well said. I think I really, really love trying to dial into this episode with all these different things that it's been playing with the idea of duality and who gets to wield power and facing your fear, facing your path, trying to dive into beyond a tragedy, beyond a bunch of people made hurtful decisions to one another. What's the show saying? What's the show dealing with? And Ken, I want to dive into this theme, if it's cool with you, this idea of facing the truth. Because I thought this last episode really hinged on different people's relationship with the truth. Is that an okay place to go?
Yeah, because I was going to say the show was saying you can't control your emotions, so why even try? In fact, how dare you? And that doesn't seem as fun. But I also think it's about regrets and failures. And that, to me, also can tie into here's the truth. And what's your thoughts? What's your relationship to it? And how do you move forward to it? How do you do when it's a failure, when it's a regret, when it's an accomplishment? So I'm with you.
You joke about that other theme, but that's one I have written down too, about feelings.
Feelings.
Exactly how much should the Jedi feel them or not? Anyway, so this whole facing the truth thing, I think so much this came down to this 4-person standoff between Chimere, Sol, Osha, and May, but a lot of it on Sol, a lot of it on can he take responsibility of the many things that went horribly wrong on Brendok? What does he feel the most guilty about? And to me, really crucially, what did the most lasting, true damage? And I thought it was interesting that the episode starts with him embracing multiple truths, just with his whole chest, right? Of he still, after all this time, thinks he was right to intervene. I think both to save the girls and to get to this, again, truth of their identity, the virgins. This is important to him. And he clearly regrets a lot of things, but his biggest regret is not saving them both, which I think is coming from true empathy, wanting to save the children, but also being obsessed with this virgins thing and wanting to know and understand the truth of that and the power of that. I think an incredibly powerful moment, and I think a fist-pumping moment for a good character who made lots of bad choices. One of the most powerful moments of the episode to me is Sol wants to deny, justify, spin killing Mother Anastasia. And as we've seen, throughout Star Wars fan discussions, people feel strongly about it one way or another. He was confused. He made a mistake. It was awful. He shouldn't have done it. All that things. But I thought it was one of the most powerful moments where he just lets all of that go and just says, I did. I can't change it. I did it. And I thought that was a very good and powerful and triumphant moment of just owning his truth. And the thing that I was really interested in is that choice that Indara made, that he seconded it, is what ultimately causes the most damage. Is he didn't tell Osha the truth, and this moment is what everything in this final episode hinges on, of Osha hearing the truth that he killed her mother. Jennifer, how did you feel about that moment where Sol stopped trying to justify or explain his perspective and just said, I did it?
I loved it. And in the moment where he says, it's okay. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh. He had accepted that he effed up big time. And really what it is about is that he took away her agency of being able to deal with the full tragedy of it, right? And we all struggled. I struggled with that scene where it's like, oh, Indara's right. She's been through a lot. Don't make it worse, right? But at the same time, withholding that crucial piece of information did not allow her to heal. Her whole kind of existence from that point forward was built on a lie. That is serious. That is really, really serious. And so it felt right that he accepted. And actually, in some ways, to me, that felt like the heroic moment that I was looking for. Is he ultimately kind of he paid for what he did, and seeing that, it's like, even though he's a good person, right? He really effed up, and good people can do bad things, which is a gigantic theme throughout this episode and this series, right? And so I really liked it.
Yeah, I think the thing I loved the portrait of him as a kind, empathetic person who cared too much, was obsessive, made a mistake, made this crucial mistake of not telling the truth, and we have this moment before where May makes the surprising, I don't actually want to kill you. I want you to take responsibility in front of everyone. And that to me felt like the heroic moment. And I think that's what I'm struggling with, of like, it was a cathartic moment. It's always cathartic when you see somebody like Osha, who's been wronged, let out that primal yell of fury. Cathartic, great. But that's, I think, one of the moments I struggle with. I think if he had said, you're right, May, I'm going to turn myself in, I'm going to truly take full responsibility, that would maybe be, I don't know, hopeful. Because true responsibility as opposed to just a cycle of vengeance. And I know it was powerful for Osha in that moment, but do you think that's going to lead to happiness for Osha, her killing Sol?
No, and I think that we see that in the moment where she's watching, which we got to talk about, the blade turning red, right? Mm-hmm. It was just, it's this look, and I've watched it a few times now. It's like surprise, shock, despair. Gosh, Amanda Stenberg did a phenomenal job with just that look of conveying all those emotions, of just like, she can't turn back now. She's gone too far. She allowed her emotions to get the best of her, which is exactly what the senator was like. You can't control your emotions. If you suppress it, at some point somebody's going to snap, which we see in this instance. But what was the question?
I'm just honestly wanting to understand, because I understand how it would be cathartic, but are you? I guess
hopeful.
Like from
it's not hopeful. It's not hopeful, but it feels like, I don't want to say justice, because it's not true, but there are times, as I've talked about before, with trauma, capital T, where you want that vengeance. You want that person to pay for their crime, and it is not right. And this is really a bad thought that I'm thinking, but in our world, hopefully people who have those feelings are able to stop themselves and say, I'm going to let the, law and order deal with it. Right. But this is fantasy. And so for me, being able to see that fantasy play out was like, it's a safe place to release that anger that we all have, but it's like it's okay because it's a Star Wars story. It's like I'm not going to actually have to live through that.
Yeah,
And I think it depends on the person, right? It depends.
Yeah,
on the
no,
person.
absolutely, and it really helps me to hear your thoughts because I think I exactly what you just said. I so feel that way about Vader, about Kylo Ren, about lots of baddies. But I think maybe this is for me like the show versus the way people are talking about it are merging in my mind, and I think there's something that's uncomfortable to me. There's a difference between um, enjoying the dark catharsis. Like I love horror movies, and that's monsters who've been wronged going, all right, world, I'm going to give it back to you. I love them. It's great. But there seems to be some sort of discussion of like, well, Saul got what he was coming to him, and this is sort of right and good. That I think there's a blurring there, and for me, I don't even know if it's the show or the discussion or what that I'm working through. So it was really helpful to hear how you were processing it.
Yeah, I think it subverts the redemption story that we see play out in Star Wars, right? Where we start off with, obviously not with the prequels, but we start off with a bad character, an evil villain. And then we watch them have a redemption story, Vader, Kylo Ren. And here we see a good character go the opposite direction. And that is an interesting starting point because I think, again, like I identify with Osha. There's so many things where I'm like, oh, yes. So then to see her take this arc, it's like, oh, that's really bad. And yet there is something so like that taps into that like lizard brain or whatever it is that where it's like, oh, thank you. You are reclaiming the agency and the power that has been taken away from people time and time again. People who think that they know what is best for someone else because they are in the dominant position, right? And this could even go with parents. It's like he was like a bad parent who's like, I know what's best for you. I love you. My love trumps what you deserve ultimately. And that's why it's like, no, this story is going to be different. And I really liked that. That to me is what makes The Acolyte so unique and such an interesting story within the Star Wars universe.
Ken, how do you feel about this sort of this idea that out of everything that happened, Soul choosing, Indara suggesting it, let's not let her off the hook, and Soul going along with it for 16 years, that is the breaking point. Not even that he killed Mother Anastasia, but that he did not give Osha the chance to know the truth and process it and handle it the way she wanted to or needed to.
I was almost going to say that is the real crime, but then that would really kind of downgrade a wonderful character and an unneeded death in Mother Anastasia. But as we even said there, and that was episode 7 was FUBAR, right? That I keep saying that. It was like everywhere you turn, something was going wrong, and we have to deal with the pieces. But I think, that was it. And going, the continuing the lie. And Jen, you said it too. I think we agreed last week. I agree with you here. They have like Dara kind of having a good point of like, you already done hurt her enough. Let's try to go in a different direction. But the fact that was withheld completely for 16 years, that there wasn't another point in time of, hey, I think we need to talk about this. I could see that maybe being the better decision. He didn't do it. He holds to it. I've seen it described as even a stubbornness to the end. I like that moment he said if it's okay, and tears are down his face. I think he feels he correctly paid for his crime maybe in that moment. He doesn't get to explain it anymore after that. I like where May was at, but to all the things you're talking about, Jen, I love what you're saying. I love hearing it. I like Joseph understanding what that moment means to you and probably so many other people, of her taking back this kind of dominant position, but to also have you acknowledge that this is she's a little shocked. The blade goes red. It's great to see bleeding the blade in live action. I think that was a great sequence. I really loved it. But there's kind of this gulp. Well, we're here now, and I'm curious. That's why I want to see where it goes. And I don't want to read into it too much, Jen, or I definitely want to give you a chance to correct me if I'm wrong. But it's like, you're seeing yourself in a character, but it's a character, so you're maybe being, again, reflective about your own life, about what decisions I want to make, what decisions I have made, and where you go from there. and what might be better for me in the long run, even when justice mixes with vengeance in the moment and all those kind of things. It's a powerful moment, and I'm connecting with what you're saying on it. But I also like that you're saying there seemed to be a little bit of oops for Moshe going forward. Am I wrong or right? Or please elaborate even more.
No, it's exactly it. It is this oops, here we are. I guess I got to go through with it, right? Now I'm a baddie. Okay.
Yeah.
Baddie transformation complete.
I think there's a lot going on there that I would, with her choice. But yeah, I think it's well written and powerfully done that she's carrying this great guilt because she thinks she could never get over, that she could never succeed in getting over her anger at May. And then when she finds out that the anger should have been at Soul this whole time, I'm just going to let the anger go. I've been beating myself up for years that I couldn't overcome my anger, so I'll just let it out. I totally 100% understand it being cathartic and a release. And I think she does play it well. I like that it's kind of quieter. It's just almost scarier than, a big rageful scream. It's not Kylo Ren throwing a fit. It's like, well, all right then. I'm going to let it all go. Powerful. So the part of why I was really interested in this big theme of truth to start with is Soul is working through it on many levels. There's a great image of him walking through there and revisiting his horrors and in May going to the room she burned and all that. So it's very much a face the past, face your own truth and reckon with it. I thought part of what made the end of this season so tragic is that Vernestra seemed to learn, if she does, everything that happened by walking through there. She knew exactly what happened. So she probably understands that out of all of the horror, the biggest problem was being dishonest. And she decides to perpetuate that by sacrificing Soul's name and covering this up. It feels extra tragic to me. Ken, how did you feel about the fact that Vernestra seeing a horror show that was born out of not telling the full truth, going, I know how to handle this. I'll not tell the full truth.
What's the was it Shakespearean? I studied only 1 year Shakespeare. You did what tangled webs we weave. Is that Shakespeare or was it Gilligan's Island? I think it was the professor on Gilligan's Island.
It's both. Shakespeare got it out just a little bit earlier.
But the professor did say it on Gilligan's Island. I feel it's that. I feel it's compounding the problem. Again, this is a series that sets out to say, hey, how did the noble Jedi get into a position to fall in the prequels? And that's why I do like the series. That's why I want to make it clear. I have no problem questioning the Jedi and also showing absolute fumbles on the Jedi at the finish line here, at the end zone. Like that's okay. And I think this is one of them. I know I'm still fascinated that it's Vernestra because of where she starts out, but that's okay. That's what happens sometimes. You start out one place in life when you're 16, and then when you're 116, it's a little different. But I wasn't surprised because also we're working to hey, anyone who knew there was a Sith or Sith-like person around is off the playing board, and memory wipe factors into that. And Vernestra knows, which is why I'm so curious about what she's going to say to Yoda once those doors close behind her. We need to talk. Yeah, you do. But anyways, to your big overall question, it was painful. It was painful to watch in a good way. Of watch someone. I'm not worried about her throwing Soul under the bus. There was a bigger attention to that. It hurts. When I go, I hope Joseph doesn't cover up. I
will cover up all my tax fraud that I do all the time, all my sins.
Ken was a good intended podcaster, but had just made a lot of mistakes with my taxes. It hurt, and it hurt so good is an okay thing for me.
Yeah, I think the thing with Vernestra for me, there keeps being that discussion of, well, is it realistic? Like, yeah, of course it's realistic that an idealistic 16, 17, 18-year-old, however old she is by the end of the High Republic Publishing Initiative, by the time they're 100, that they're different. Totally believable. But it's still like, I have had friends I care about make a very believable bad choice, and it still hurts because they were my friend. And like, come on. It's not about believability. It's about, people having a relationship where they love Vern. So it's hard to see her make perhaps a bad choice. I thought what was really rich about this choice was Vernestra serves Senator Raincourt the exact truth that he wants on a platter. So it isn't just a thematic of truth where she is obscuring the truth. She is, in fact, giving him the truth he basically asked for. He believes that a rogue Jedi who can't control his emotions will be a downfall, and we can talk about the Anakin of all that. But Vernestra serves Raincourt that exact truth. Sol was a rogue Jedi who couldn't control his emotions. So Vernestra's been worried this whole time, trying to cover things up to stop Raincourt's investigation, and instead creates on purpose a truth that invites Raincourt's investigation. So my feeling is that she does this in service of obscuring a larger truth, either the return of the Sith or her own relationship and cultability with Chimere. Jennifer, why do you think Vernestra, after trying all season to stop Raincourt, gives him exactly what he wants?
Yeah, I think she just effed up. I mean, she just really, she just miscalculated. She felt like she was in control of the situation, and he's like, he just was on a mission. Basically, he wants to investigate the Jedi. He has very strong beliefs about the cult. You know, the fact that the Jedi are a cult. So yeah, I don't think that anything that she would have said would have sent him on the trajectory that he went on. But I was curious to know, like, because I didn't read I haven't read the High Republic book. So I wanted to know, I was like, oh man, she's making a lot of bad choices. And I was curious about how it, that shifted from what she was like in the books.
The phase 3, the final phase of the current publishing initiative, hasn't wrapped up, so people don't know how Vernestra's story ends. So I think that's also, for some Vernestra fans, not speaking for all of them, but for some of them, it's a little bit of a raw nerve of like, how's her story going to end in the publishing? Is it going to end setting her on a trajectory to, decades from now, be a little bit more, guarded, rigid, manipulative, all that. I think this is part of what made this episode and this resolution feel so extra dark to me, because it felt like, to me, she was knowingly giving Raincourt exactly what he wanted, because there's a deeper, darker truth, and in fact, one even perhaps closer to the crime she's, pinning on Sol. She's got that quote when she's telling May about her life, when May doesn't remember. She says, Sol made a mistake he lived with so long it twisted his mind. He justified every selfish step with the love he had for your sister. And I really had that feeling of, is she just talking about Sol, or is Vern reflecting on her own relationship and her own past with Chimere? Is she covering up a Sith because that would be too much problem, or is she covering up a personal, emotional relationship that she maybe screwed up as bad as Sol? And I think me thinking about, is Vernestra just repeating an exact cycle of what this show just worked through, felt extra dark to me. Ken, what do you feel about Vern's motivations?
Yeah, no, that's a kind of a well said there, and you're peeling back the layers of pain there. I agree with that. I think even, and I gotta say, I was wrong. I think we had been open to the possibility that the marks on Chimere had come from the light whip, which, again, I'll say, not 100% confirmed as a fact, but most likely that once again, the show said, here's a mystery, but it's not a mystery. We're telling you that because what comes after that is more important. I thought it was not a lot to wedge into the finale. It was a confirmation, but it was like, it opens exactly what you're talking about. An entire season of conversation between Vernestra and Chimere that we need to work through. And I kind of, again, it's a mistake, as Jen said so eloquently. She effed up. It's like, is she repeating the cycle because now she knows that her mess up has led to a Sith, an actual Sith, and Sol as well. So is it like more fear? Again, tangled webs we weave. Like it is dark. It is bleak. And again, I'm always okay with these big questions. But I felt, as someone who has not even finished the series, I felt like it was really heavy for that character to be making those decisions.
Yeah, and I think for me, I feel like if she knows, like, okay, there's really no way to pivot around Raincourt, so I'll just really give him exactly what he wants, and he can start around patting himself on the back, and he won't be actually paying attention to this Sith issue. I can deal with it. Like, if he's going to investigate anyway, and she's lost that battle, why not celebrate the sacrificing of Saul's name, and tell the full truth exactly as it happened. And hey, the Jedi are needed because there's a Sith out there. I think that's what led me to think this is personal, because why, if she's going to lose to Raincourt anyway, why not also just say, and the Sith have returned and the Jedi are needed? Jen, how do you feel about the difference between sort of the Sith issue versus her specific issue with Chimere?
But it can't happen because the prequels. That's why I was like, oh, okay. That takes care of that. I mean, really, that's like that's the only way that I could really view it. It's like, okay, good. They tied that up because otherwise people were going to have lots and lots of questions. No, but I can't even think about it any other way, to be honest.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think for me, I'm like, they've got 100 years to take care of that. Right. And I want to know, why is this character making this choice? And what is it saying about the Jedi as an institution? And I think that was that moment where, like, if she had come out and said, here's the truth, it would have been this counterpoint to me of Saul in all his failures, to have her say, all of this happened because the Jedi didn't live up to their code of honesty and transparency. So let's be real transparent about what happened. And the fact that she didn't and doubled down on a different mistake, or on a very similar mistake, probably for personal reasons, really felt like the show is going there. It isn't about canon. It's about the rot is deep in the Jedi Order.
And people in positions of power want to hold on to their power, and they kind of like will justify it in these weird ways where they tangle themselves up in knots to justify why they want to maintain their power and how they are doing what's best for everyone by lying, but we see the scene where she's very tenderly like, I'm sorry, my friend. Right. So I think that's nice that we get that, because what she does is very dark, and it's not a good look. It's not a good look for the Jedi.
Well, and I want to talk about this jerk Raincourt, because I've seen far too many people quoting him online going, finally someone said it. Yeah, about 100 years later, Senator turned Emperor Palpatine goes, see, Raincourt was right. It is a dangerous line to follow. He is someone who is afraid of losing power. He is someone who is questioning, why do you have power that I don't understand? I think he's out for himself and more not the safety of the Republic, which is why I think, to your point, Joseph, Jen, you're right, because there's a little bit of plot armor on some of the decisions here. And I don't have a problem with that. But like if Ernesto had said, you're right, but there's a threat. We need, whether you believe it or not, and that'd been part of the, bring proof. Are they really Sith? But it just, I loved the character, or loved the performance, because it made me, I just was really, he wasn't, to me, speaking truths. He was starting a slide that the Republic would experience to thunderous applause, while safe and secure society guy is out there going, we always told you they were bad.
Yeah. And we were given the information that he wants this investigation to get more power himself. So he felt like Chimere too, of like, you've made some good points, but to what end? Because you just want this investigation to get more power too. And in fact, if the Jedi have unchecked power, how is it better that the Senate has total power over the Jedi, and now the Senate has unchecked power, and Qui-Gon can't rescue slaves? Is that what you wanted there, Raincourt? His line of, when you're looking up to heroes, you don't have to face what's right in front of you, I thought was his most interesting line, because it echoes like Indara says, we can't take this girl's dream away, so let's lie to her. So she kind of sets her up to look at heroes. The other thing I want to say about that line quickly, of when you're looking up to heroes, you don't have to face what's right in front of you. That's one of those lines I fist pump for in reality, because I feel like my own personal belief is like, I don't want politicians to be heroes in real life. They're a set of laws and policies, and I'll vote for the superior one, and you need a good communicator, blah, blah, blah. So I love that line from a real world perspective, but there's always been a Star Wars story of like, but you need someone to look up to. You need a hero. You need hope. Heroes can be flawed, but you do need a hero. So for me, that's a great line where I feel a tension between agreeing with it in real world versus, do I want this sort of mythic tale of hope to get that real world? So just an example for me of a point of tension between how viscerally real the Acolyte is versus other Star Wars storytelling.
like Andor's pretty bleak, but at the end of it, the final episode doesn't go. Those prison guards on Narkina 5 probably had a point, yeah. Like,
yes.
And I think there's, and again, I don't know if it's the show or some of the energy outside of the show that's just rubbing up against me. And I got to be honest with that, you know.
Yeah. I'll throw this out here because I put this under the theme of truth too. I thought it was borderline funny that we saw Chimere's truth revealed fully. He's always been honest that what he wants is an acolyte, but I did think it was funny how much he ping-ponged between Osha and May this episode, and really like either one of them's fine. whichever one is going to kill Soul without a weapon, I'm for, because he was all pro Osha. Then Osha had a vision of May killing Soul, and he's like, I got to get back with May.
Yeah.
And then May didn't kill Soul. He's like, I got to get with Osha. I thought that was borderline funny because it revealed just, I don't care about these people at all. I want the powerful one. I want the one who's willing to kill. That's all I care about. These aren't individuals to me.
I agree with that. Yeah. Jed, I don't know. I don't want to speak for you.
Going back to the heroes thing of it all, I really think that what I enjoy about Star Wars in general is that it has taken our heroes and it has shown their flaws. And I think this show, because that's what makes them more relatable. If they're just all like, godlike with no flaws at all, well, that's not really interesting to watch, right? I think this show pushes that idea really far. And so obviously it is challenging. But I like that. That's what I like about it.
I love challenging the heroes and I love making them real. And that's what Luke is wrestling with in The Last Jedi of like, some people, I don't think it's right for people to see me as a hero. They should see me as a sad, a bitter guy who dribbles green milk in my beard. I'm a human who tried hard and failed. And why can't the galaxy see me that way? And then he comes to this realization of, well, some people need a hero, so I'll try to be a hero. And I think, again, I'm so fascinated to see where this would go in a season 2, because it just sort of stops at the flaw and doesn't give us any of the pick yourself up and make a better choice.
Yeah, and for me, look, someone who's loved Han Solo his entire life, but has grown with the character. I like what you're saying, Jen, a lot here. Of with Han, this is a guy who maybe sets out to be a hero in his own story and realizes that that's not truly who he should be, who he is, and it's not about being a hero. It's about making the good choices. It's running back towards the problem. It's helping those who are bullied, helping those who are oppressed under the government's foot there at that time. Han runs away his entire life until he finally stays and dies for it. And that's a more realistic version of this rogue scoundrel hero that entire generations grew up loving and wanting to be, myself included. But even I think that's one of the geniuses of Solo, and what's there with Kira going, I know who you are. She doesn't go, you're a hero. You're a good guy. You're good. You're in your heart, you're good. So stop trying to be this.
Yeah,
we don't want to look up to that. We want to follow you, or you should follow your heart. And I think that's part of what I enjoy about it. And this series does that in a lot of ways. This like I said, this is holding up a magnifying glass while also being a mirror to all of us. I think that's a good, strong thing. I've said from the beginning, I've liked this show. I've loved discussing it even more. and I think, Jen, you've been part of that journey with me, bringing some wonderful points to it.
One last thing I'll say about that is that I think when I look back on the original trilogy, yes, obviously, Luke is seen as just a hero, kind of like a singular hero. But really, if we look at all of Star Wars, it's about the community of heroes. And I think here we have a lot of individual heroes, but as a community, as a group, they fail. And because there's not like a couple people who are able to be like, come on, do the right thing. They're all being kind of led astray in their own ways. That's why we get this like downfall of a group of heroes. And I think it's more realistic that not just one person is going to rise up and save the day, because that one person is going to fall, but they need other people around them to be like, if you're down, I will be here to help you. I'm going to help support you. And I feel like in this, it almost feels like there's like a bunch of individual heroes kind of out for themselves.
Yeah.
No, so I really like that. I think the Jedi Order needs its Kira. I think it's it's glory. If this man shall fall, who shall pick up the flag? Like it's community is always the strongest thing in Star Wars. I think that's a great point, and a lot of what has been asked, and a lot of what George asked, and was always putting out there was like, be careful of these institutions, not because they need to go away, but because they stray from what their intentions truly are. So yeah, I think we need that.
Yeah, absolutely. Even the great triumph of Return of the Jedi is, Luke having a little family squabble with dad and creepy kind of granddad, not literally, but in terms of just like the vibe, symbolism of it, the vibe. They're up there hashing out family stuff in the Ewoks, in Lando, in Leia, and Han, and R2, and Wedge, and they're doing the rising up, the heroics. I want to talk a little bit about this idea of sacrifice. We've talked about it. Sol telling Osha it's okay as she kills him without a weapon, I think has an element of acceptance of sacrifice. Vernestra sacrifices Sol's truth, taking even the awful things he did even farther. And she knows it, I think, to say, I'm sorry, my friend, that she is sacrificing his name and his memory and his history. But what I really want to get your thoughts on is what is going on with Osha and May at the end. The intent to me feels like they know that they've both hurt each other and not understood where the other is coming from. The full truth is out. They both understand where one another is coming from, and they're working hard to give one another what they believe the other wants. And to me, it is about sacrifice. It is about the gift, not of the Magi, the gift of the Acolyte, where they both try to give the other what they need. I think that, May is willing to sacrifice her memories of her sister, her family, her connection, the only things that she's ever cared about, to give Osha what she believes Osha wants, which is agency and making her own choice and letting her explore her identity. And I feel like Osha is like, well, thanks for giving me my agency. What I'm going to do with my agency is I'm going to sell my soul to the dark side to save you, sister, because you are now, I wanted to leave before, but now you are the most important thing to me. So I'm going to sell my soul for you. The way she walks up to Chimere, and it isn't like, oh, you're right, anger's the greatest, train me. It's, I'll be your damn acolyte that you want if you leave my sister alone. That to me isn't somebody who's like, I'm totally down with the dark side. It was, I'm making this sacrifice for my sister. Jennifer, what do you feel is going on with Osha and May at the end? Is it a sacrifice?
Oh boy. Yes.
That's the right response. My response kind of ends with that. Oh boy.
Right. It's so deep and complex. And for me, that was what was really powerful, is seeing this bond between one person, which I felt so vindicated again. I was like, yes,
ding, ding, ding.
Yes, I've been saying it. Thank you. Since the beginning, they're the same person. They're not twins, but we'll call sister, right? Yeah, I think that like that sisterly love, that familial bond that was taken away, it is now being put back together, but it is warped. It nobody's making the right decision. It's like this kind of like selfish love, which already caused so much destruction before, and now we're seeing it play out again between these two sisters. I mean, really, this show should be like Dark Side Tales. And I think if it were like titled that, I think that maybe people would respond to it or see it in a different way. It's just getting a different perspective. Right?
You made me. I was just having a conversation with my niece about eating a really hot pepper and being okay with it if you've been told the truth by whoever sold you the pepper that it's really hot, versus like she accidentally got a hot pepper at like, I can't remember, like just like Panda Express. She got like a devastatingly hot pepper at Panda Express.
Chicken? Oh, it's
she
the
was
worst.
Like, not fair. And if the Acolyte was always going to be like, welcome to the Star Wars that's gonna hurt you.
Yeah, I think that Leslie Helen kind of said that though at the beginning. Remember, she was like, I feel like she kind of hinted at it.
To be fair, she said a lot.
That's true.
Over the many interviews, but she's always said a Sith perspective. And
she's always said that, yeah.
And I think it did fulfill that. But I think I think this is the other thing I think is I'm processing about the end of this season is there's a beauty and a catharsis in them having their voices, making their choices, coming together for a moment with no one else in between them for a moment, and having their connection and making this beautiful Jedi coded choice when Jedi are behaving well of being selfless and sacrificing themselves for the other. That's all very beautiful. And there's even a glimmer of hope in that, because they say we will see one another again. This isn't the end. But where the show leaves us is they've just swapped and they're back to starting positions. They're still both caught being pawns in a larger game. I think there's a whole debate to be had about the ascension and what is that, and Mother Anastasia clearly loved them, but how much was the rest of the coven sort of using them for something they needed? Put that aside for a second and just look at the Jedi and the Sith. We're just entirely swapped. Osha ends up embracing the dark side, with Chimere as a master, and May is with the Jedi, unaware of her full truth. They have both just entirely swapped where they started, which is sort of narratively cool and fascinating and really intriguing for a season 2. But if this is the end of the show, what is the show saying by just ending up with the two of them still caught in the game, having only succeeded in swapping places, in my opinion? Jennifer, what are your thoughts on that?
I don't really see Osha as totally swapped places. I feel like she has more, and I don't know if it's just from the look that Amanda was giving at the end, but it just feels like there's a little bit like she has kind of reclaimed her power, and there's almost a subservience that Chimere is exhibiting in this like tender touch of her thumb, which such a small detail, but it's like he needs her. He wants that connection. That's kind of like a vulnerable moment. Yeah. And so I feel like she now is going to, have her whole power, which everyone was telling her that she could not have from she's going to get to do what she wants for the first time. No mother, no Jedi master or Jedi order is going to tell her what she can and cannot do. I saw it as independence. And I think that this is going to be a love story between these two. The power of the two, and then the Darth Plagueis who has his own ideas. But yeah, I didn't see it as like a true flipping places. I saw it as like a level up, if you will.
I agree with you that she is in a much better place than May. May's anger and need for vengeance was manipulated, and she clearly felt a lower status to Chimere, terrified of him, not knowing his identity, afraid that he would kill her. You're right that Osha's in a much higher status position, but she's still at a position where she feels like the only way to save May was to sacrifice herself to be in the Acolyte. She's a stronger Acolyte, but this goes to the whole, like, will there be a season 2? Is she strong enough that she can get out of that? She wants freedom, right? That's what her dream was as a kid, was I want to go explore the galaxy. I want true freedom. The lie of the dark side promises freedom. So maybe she's lying to herself that she's getting freedom, but she isn't just putting a blade through him and walking away. If it ended with her putting a blade through Chimere and she's free, that would be a different story. She's definitely higher status and more powerful, but she still seems like she feels like she needs to be in this relationship somehow to keep May safe. So I'm wrestling with it.
But in life, we all have to choose which system we want to be a part of. And if one system fails us, then we might just be like, well, we have no choice but to choose this other system that is offering us support and an opportunity and whatever. And that's the tragedy of it all, is that you're right, she's not really free. She's now just locked in a new bad system. But she just felt like her whole life was rocked by the system that she believed in to be the good people, the heroes. And so she feels like it's almost like a giving up, or like just accepting one's fate of just, where else can I go? Because she can't totally be free in the galaxy, nor can we be totally free,
Yeah.
Nobody's going to go off and live in the wilderness. I mean, you could, but
so we've seen a few Jedi try.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's really, really interesting. It is. I mean, the shipping thing and the relationship thing and the desire connection between them, it is a factor. So it is interesting to think of this almost as like when you've watched a friend go through a devastating relationship and then they get into a bad rebound relationship where she has broken up with the Jedi and she's in a bad rebound relationship with the Sith. Ken?
That's exactly what I was going to say, because it's exactly what I felt, and I want to follow this up with a lot more. But it was like you get in the car after you left the party, and you turn to your partner and go, "Oh no, how do we get her out of that? Can we tell her?" Not that it didn't feel. I'm not even about hopeful. It just I was like, no. Remember, I was like, I don't want Osha to go bad because I like this. I want her to get that freedom. I want her to get that independence. I want her to find her true self in a better way. And I'm I guess, hurt by it, but that's again, okay. I want shows to do this. Shows should cause these kind of feelings. There's this moment before the switch, they're reuniting. They're apologizing. I'm sorry I did this. I'm sorry I did that. They're having this understanding. They're hugging. They're embracing. They're crying. It's real. It's a solid moment. And Mandela Stenberg is playing off herself here. That's hard to do. I thought it was one of her best moments. And then there's a moment. Chimera shows up, and Osha puts her faith in the Jedi at one point, right? She says that. She says, I forget the exact quote. And Chimera and Mare are like, "Oh, you're going to be too powerful. They're going to kill you." That's a bad branding issue in the Jedi. That's one of the failures of the Jedi. Their branding was bad, because I don't necessarily know if that's the case. It could be the case. And Osha's kind of like, yeah, you're right. I don't have a way out. I agree, Jen, with what you're saying about agency, power, independence, becoming a true self. And I want to be very clear here as to not feel or anyone to misunderstand me that I'm stepping on anything that any of us has said in this episode, but especially what you've said, Jen. But I'm kicking back to you this question. Do you think she's happy? Do you think he's like, I'm just happy I'm with anyone because I'm a lonely sad boy who has a master creeping around watching me? I don't know. And that had, I was like, it's framed as this classic heroic, sunlight's fading shot. I'm like, oh no, we got to break them up. So anyways, I'm playfully kicking back to you, Jen, going, is this, you happy for your friend?
No, but sometimes you need to go through those rebound relationships to learn find what you want and who you are, because you think that person that you loved was the person, right? And then they burn you so bad, and you go with the bad choice, right? And it's almost like giving into your impulse, right? You know that this person is bad for you, and yet you just can't help yourself. And you're in that relationship for who knows how long, right? And then there comes a point where you're like, oh, my mental health is really suffering. This is a really toxic relationship. And maybe somebody else, one of your friends is like, yeah, I kind of was telling you that all along, right? So maybe we
didn't want to say anything.
Didn't want to say anything.
Party.
Right. Didn't want to intervene. You guys, we're making out a lot. But
so, I think this is, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no. So I think she's going to come to that realization in season 2.
I think so too, and I think this is what I continue to wrestle with. Is it feels like a cliffhanger, and if they've announced season 2 while we're recording this, I'll be so thrilled, because I feel like it is a good closing of a chapter, but it doesn't feel like the end of the story where the show kind of says its view. I feel like it's playing with the world, but I don't feel like the show is trying to say she made the right choice. The Sith are great.
No,
they're gonna cuddle, and Plagueis is gonna cook them stew, and it's gonna be a great old time.
I'm so happy my son found someone, because that's Plagueis' voice to me. But you said something, Jen, that
he's been so lonely.
So lonely. He's been so lonely. He's a good boy too. You had said something around the bleeding of the blade scene, and I was going to kick it back to you there. I didn't know if it was the right question. I don't know. Again, I don't know if I'm right, and I'm curious, John. But you kind of had it. There's some resignation with Osha. This is you're singing a Dylan song here. You got to serve someone, the devil or the Lord, and there's a resignation there. Much like I even thought there was that duality early on of the witches are free, but the witches are also kind of trapped themselves in what they've got going on, because there's so many things we don't know about. Mother Coral's still alive, all that kind of stuff. Or could be. So anyways, I don't know if I'm off base. That's where it's it's the ending was not puzzling to me. I just was like, I was sad. I was down. Like Sheev's resigned herself to this situation. So I don't know. I'm with you. Maybe she's got to learn.
I think for me it tied into the wrestling that the show's been doing with the idea of choice or destiny. Can we always choose, or there's some things that, like, for whatever reason you just run into them and it keeps pushing you this way? And she's always been coded as somebody who wants choice. She doesn't want to just follow the destiny of going through the Ascension and becoming a witch. She wants to choose to be a Jedi. And she thinks she's making choices. She thinks she's having a vision of her sister killing Soul. And I wonder in that moment of that look of resignation, how much she's like, I've been trying to believe in choice, but it's destiny. I can't escape this. I saw this vision. This vision was me. I guess I'm destined to do this. I guess I'm destined to give in. There is like a little bit of a sadness to it when she gives in. It isn't just a feral animal cry of fury, right? Like some dark side is. It's sadness because she can't escape her destiny, I think, in her mind, having had that vision of literally this.
Somebody needed to help her early on and tell her it's okay to have these big feelings. It's okay to be angry. Like she never learned how to deal with the upset and the hurt and the pain. The Jedi were like just trying to distract her and be like, it's okay, it's all right. It's like, but so then that's why in that moment it's like, oh, I finally give in to my feelings and this is what happens. Oh,
I agree that in a giant way, and it's almost in a more real world way than the Star Wars story, but that's what's at play. And then when someone comes along and says, no, your emotions are natural, the anger and the fear and everything, use them to solve your problems. And that to me is a problem and a lie. But I think what you're talking about, Jen, is a truth that it needs to be looked at in story and going forward as someone like Rey rebuilds an order of, hey, you have these emotions. Here's not how to control them in terms of erasing them, but how to not let them define your actions. But I think we all have that going on in our own lives too. And I think some of, the Padme's wisdom is lost on Anakin, and like a lot of her wisdom overlooked by many in the galaxy of like, no, Anakin, it's to be angry is natural. Like you're okay. But we got to use it in a better way to go forward. But it's sometimes very hard to when someone like Osha has been trained or felt like, whether even intentional or not from the Jedi Order, but felt like I couldn't even have these emotions. I couldn't question it. At some point, she's probably thinking, what did happen? What did happen? And if maybe she's getting a sense of it. And all through this series, you're getting a sense that something didn't go right. And Osha's like, I need to know. And so the fear, the doubt, the anger is creeping in. And yeah, she didn't have someone, Vernestra, Soul, anyone sit down, not only tell their truth, but say the questions and emotions they're having are natural. Here's how we can deal with them and not control them. The view of controlling them, this tight, I'm not going to be angry. I'm not going to be angry. Of course I'm going to be angry. Through the most depressing times of my life, I would always say, some days today I'm going to own the depression so I can sit with it, stew with it, and try to move forward with it so I can let it go. And it's an ongoing battle, obviously. But I think, I like what you said there, Jen. These emotions are real. They're not going away. So she wasn't given all the tools or didn't feel she had all the tools to deal with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought the show was really interesting in terms of which is the last kind of big theme thing I wanted to talk about, the ongoing Star Wars, playing with the idea of attachment. Is it a gift or a curse? How much do we can't deny emotions, but there are dark emotions that if we act on, ultimately we hurt ourselves. I think it is cathartic, everything that Osha goes through. I think there is a lot to be said about, as you said, one of our discussions, Jen, when justice fails, people tend towards wanting to set things right themselves. It's all sorts of interesting stuff going on with that. But I don't think that Osha giving into those dark emotions will ultimately give her what she truly wants. So in one way, I think it's telling this kind of classic Star Wars story. The show also throws out a lot of things. Chimere makes the compelling argument that the Jedi imprison their feelings, that they are bad because they don't feel enough. And Senator Raincourt is kind of arguing that the Jedi lie to themselves that emotions can be controlled at all, that they should just, stop repressing. I guess, in some ways they're making a similar argument about specifically repression. But then I feel like Soul is kind of a portrait of a character that's trapped in these sort of in the way we judge the Jedi. Of we're mad at them when they feel too much, and we're mad at them when they're not rational enough. Soul is this character who cares a lot. He's warm, he's kind, he's empathetic. That's even the way, Vernestra kind of pays tribute to him. But then, maybe he does care too much, and he becomes selfish, and a little bit controlling in how much he loves. So, Ken, what do you feel like this show is trying to say about what Jedi should do with their emotions? Where should they find them, or is the show just walking us through the real tragedy of how hard it is to deal with emotions?
I think walking through the real tragedy. I'd love to. I don't know. It's one of those times where I do now want to sit down with the creator or hear the creator give some insights of what they were trying to say. I have some thoughts on it. It's like with Rancor. It's like I almost want to say, you're right. I was wrong to think I can't control my emotions because I want to murder you right now. So guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to murder you. Like, I really feel it's that extreme. Like we are, try not to get it too real world here. I apologize, but it's like we're trying to replace the Jedi because they're not perfect at being good. And in that process, we're intentionally or unintentionally empowering those who are really good at evil. It's just we're continuing to hammer them, and they make mistakes. There's so many horrible mistakes here, and that's part of it. But then we're at the end of the day saying, why did you even try to be good? Why did you even do that? Why did you think you could do that? How dare you? And that's what I felt Rancor represents for me. Why I'm upset. So as far as the show's perspective on it, I don't know. It just might be a wonderful mishmash of emotions and plot points and things that we have to pull out from ourselves. I just sometimes maybe want it to be a little more clear, not because I need it spoon-fed, but because I think it's been left up to some dangerous interpretations in a dangerous time. But that's going well beyond the show, beyond the walls of Star Wars.
Understand. Yeah, I think for me, what I'm processing, and I think the show is really rich and interesting for doing this, is the perspective on the Jedi's failures in the prequel era is pretty clear on they have become too rigid, too detached. They are not empathetic or kind to this 9-year-old boy. The Caddy Money is like, ha, you miss your mom. And we're all like, ooh, Jedi, you're so cold. You're so cruel. And Saul is almost on the opposite of, like, he does care too much to the point where he does damage. And I think I'm interested to find stories of Jedi where they're walking this tightrope, where they can't be cold and lack empathy because they're love. They're there to defend people. Their religion is that we're all connected and we all matter. They have to love everybody. They have to feel so much to do a good job. But if they run with their own emotions too much, then they can start trampling on other people the way Soul does. So I guess for me, in a way, it makes me feel like this is where I come from, the justice for the Jedi idea of, like, they're trying to do a really hard thing and they can tip into bad ways, either way. And I do want to see some stories that sort of celebrates characters that navigate embracing emotion, embracing empathy and kindness, but not taking it too far and finding that balance. Jen, how do you feel about the Jedi and their emotions?
I think that this is going to be bookended. I think with the Rey movie, we are going to see them finally maybe embracing emotions, allowing emotions, maybe even allowing attachment to some extent. I think this is to set up what happens in some sense with the Rey movie. In this instance, we really see the problem that I've always had with the Jedi, which is, yes, you've been through some terrible things. Yes, you have all these self-doubts. Just quiet your mind. Just quiet your mind. Tune it all out. That is not normal. That is really freaking hard to do, which is when I'm watching it as a kid, I'm like, well, I guess only Jedi Masters can do that because I, as a kid, can't do that, right? Because, like, for me, I have all these big feelings. I have all this emotion and trauma and attachment and blah, 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 blah. How do I quiet that, right? So you have Soul, who's just kind of like doesn't know how to deal with his love and his attachment because everyone's telling him you can't have that. And then you have Osha, and people are like, you just have to ignore your trauma. You just have to and then because she's not able to let it go, they're like, sorry, you can't be a part of our order. It's like, what? That is wrong. And so I hope that the Rey movie deals with that, because that's always been an issue for me, is like, I mean, and that's why it's fantasy, is because I look to the heroes and I'm like, wow, if only I could do that, right? If only I could just sit there and meditate. Because when I sit there and meditate, let me tell you, all these thoughts are going through my head. It's really, really difficult to do. So yeah. Justice for the Jedi, but maybe in the Rey movie.
Yeah. I feel like for me, I really relate to a lot of what you're saying. And I try to be Jedi-like here on the podcast, but I have days where just like, I can't control my anger and I have to tell my wife, I'm sorry, I'm going to separate myself. I'm not mad at you. I'm furious to the point I can't, I just need to be mad alone in the apartment so I don't act on it. Like I get it. It's incredibly hard to do. I think I'm really affected by this line that a lot of people responded to in the Acolyte of from Jecki of, we're not defined by what we lose, we're defined by what we survive. And I think this idea that, yes, it also goes to, Qui-Gon's your focus determines your reality of we can master our pain and choose to look forward. But in order to do that, we must first be honest with ourselves about our pain. And that's what was denied Osha. And I think that's why this episode deals with, out of all the horrible things, the thing that shattered everything was Osha being denied the ability to process that pain.
Yeah, I like that.
It's a cautionary tale for all parents out there.
Tell your kids if you murder someone.
Just be honest with it. Be upfront.
Yeah. It's great. It's great. Great thing to learn. Any other big picture thoughts from you, Jennifer?
Oh my goodness. No. Gosh, yeah, mirroring for our characters, mirroring for us as the audience, what we want to see, what we do see. Yes, this show, so many layers.
Mm-hmm. I very much agree with that. Ken, any other big thematic thoughts before we take a quick break?
Over an hour on just the themes alone. I'm really proud of the work we've done here today, and there's much more to discuss. I think much like Last Jedi or some of the other things in fandoms that maybe challenge you or don't sit with you right away, rewatches, not just because it needs a rewatch, but a rewatch for your soul to go, what is here for me? What is there? I think this series will be rewarding in that regard too, and there'll be more to discuss as we go on.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think this show is meant to challenge us and meant to make us reflect, and I think that's what we've been doing for a long time on this episode. So we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. And we're back to continue our discussion of the season or series, but let's hope season finale of The Acolyte. We always like to talk about canon, lore, responsible speculation, but hey, let's talk about this, Darth Plagueis, if you believe that's Darth Plagueis. I think it is. So Darth Plagueis creeping around the planet that is not Octo, probably Baldemic, right?
Baldemnik, yeah.
Baldemnik, yeah. Okay. Baldemnik. So not only do we finally get Darth Plagueis after just, a decade of, is it Darth Plagueis? Finally, it is Darth Plagueis. But also the canon implications that whatever the modern canon story ends up being, as we understand it, Plagueis has a desire to manipulate midi-chlorians to create life, which does potentially tie Osha and May's creation story to Anakin's. Huge emphasis on potentially. But Ken, how do you feel about seeing Plagueis, and how do you feel about the fact that his showing up does quite possibly tie this story to the big picture of the Skywalker saga in Anakin Skywalker?
I like it overall. I really do. And it, going into the show, speaking of Leslie Headland and some comments, there was some things she said. Like, I took some big canon swings and I was surprised they let me do it type of vibe. I don't have the quotes in front of me, but there was those kind of things before. And so that kind of started to make me think something like this could happen. As it unfolded, it makes a lot of sense. Now, I have, it's a good compromise, because I had a lot of people from my past who've always loved Plagueis' staff who were like, this series, he's going to be in this series. And I'm like, he's absolutely not going to be in the series. I don't think this is what this is about. And it was a compromise. He was, but the series was not about him. So he was creeping. But I like the implications going forward. I love James Luceno's book. It's not canon. I'd be happy if they had him rewrite a more canon version. I actually would. It's one of my favorite Star Wars books. I like it. I like the idea. I like the implications. I still think it. I still got folks in my life who are upset that they've stomped all over the legacy of Anakin. I don't think that's the case. I think you had someone that the Force created in a way we don't fully know, and then you had Mother Anastasia use the Force to create them. I think there's a I'm splitting hairs, but it's different. And what does one person or master and apprentice learn from them and take forward? We don't know, and I think it's delicious. I think it's delicious Star Wars lore, and I'm excited to see more. This is why I would definitely want a season 2 to put this in the forefront.
Mm-hmm. Jennifer, how do you feel about the Plagueis of it all?
I loved it. I thought it was just the right amount. And like you said, Ken, it was a big canon swing. I was really happy that they went for it, right? Because with Star Wars fans, you're just going to open a bunch of can of worms. Canon worms, right? Like, sorry, I know you guys hate those. Okay, but I mean, really, like, if you're gonna make that claim, Star Wars fans are gonna go nuts, and that's why I was glad that, like you're saying, the series was not about Plagueis, but he's there. And that's good. And it makes me want to go and read that book because that's why I was glad too. I was like, I don't have time to read this book and study everything to know about him. So I was like, okay, cool. He's there lurking in the cave, but it's not about him.
People focus on the book, and I understand why. It's a great book. It's been a long time since I've read it, but also, like, let's not forget, even without the book, Sheev, whether you believe him or not, is talking about him in Revenge of the Sith and talking about his ability to, create life. So you can even put the novel aside and just be like, this is interesting because it's tying to a Revenge of the Sith. I was thrilled. It was a great beat of the episode to be like, okay, people have been talking around Plagueis. I would have been happy to see the weird Sith Bith Darth Tenebrous, but in a way it would have been like, okay, but is Plagueis coming or not? Because because of everybody's desire to see Plagueis and how explicitly Plagueis ties this story to the larger canon. The parts of it that intrigue me is I like it when Star Wars says, why not? This idea is out there. Let's rip the Band-Aid off and play with it. If Plagueis is interested in this, could he have had some connection with with Mother Anastasia and the witches? Is that the thing that Mother Coral is so afraid of the Jedi finding out of, that wisdom was shared back and forth or stolen or given or whatever, or even if it's not that and it is just Plagueis stealing it, that stuff's all intriguing to me because it comments on the story we just finished watching. In the story we just finished watching, Soul's obsession with the twins because the Vergence is powerful and the way they're created is important, comes off as entirely a flaw, in my opinion. But if we later learn that if the Jedi had been willing to tell the truth about what happened on Brendok, pull that thread, find out more about the Vergence, more about the witches, more truth, more transparency, would it have led them to the Sith? So emotionally in his relationships, I think Soul was doing the wrong thing, but he might have actually been onto something, that what happened here is really important. This level of power of this Vergence, creating life, whole cloth from the Force, is important. That might, have as much to say about Anakin's story as it does about the story we just watched.
Yeah, and him and Torben talking about, they want a big noble mission. It's like, well, you were on one. You just didn't know it. You couldn't find it.
Yeah.
Shakespearean.
I do want to throw this out here too, because one of the things that people were excited about for the show was it's set, way before the Skywalker saga. It's all new characters. We can do anything with them. We can stab them 3 times. We can break their necks. We can do anything with them. And we are finding ourselves potentially tied back pretty directly to literally the origin of the Skywalker saga in terms of Anakin.
Yes. I like it.
I can't remember if the creators ever said anything about that. But Jennifer, how do you feel about, like, there does seem to be a sort of gravity to the Skywalker saga that even shows that fans are excited about because they're disconnected end up kind of connecting a little bit.
I think it's necessary because of the fan base. We're not going to ignore the history. And so therefore the creators are not going to ignore the history as well, both in universe and also, story wise. And so I think it's important. That's why I really liked the Plagueis cameo, because it was like, we acknowledge that this being is here. We hear you. We believe it too. This is we're making this claim, right? But at the same time, it's like an acknowledgement, but we don't have to like dive right into it. We don't have to answer everything for you right now, fans. Just wait.
Yeah.
So yeah, exactly. I really like that, because I think if they didn't, everyone would be wondering, right? Like, they had to acknowledge it. So I mean, that's just, I think it was a smart move.
Ken, how do you feel about the? I mean, I'm not saying this should happen, but you could have told a story like this and not connected it to Plagueis. That's a real creative choice. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, both big cameos in this episode, appearances, cameos, whatever, that word always gets debated. I'm tired of that conversation, but you know what it was, the Yoda and the Plagueis of it all. Like, you could have done it without it, but they exist. Especially, we know Yoda exists at this time, and we had a reason to believe Plagueis did as well. I always say this respectfully, because I get what people are like. I want to go to another part of the galaxy. I don't want anything to do with the Skywalkers, and I try not to be snarky when I say it. But all of these are Skywalker saga stories, because this is the story of Star Wars. It's not that all roads lead to two droids on Tatooine and a young farm boy looking for more, but it kind of does, and it kind of this drives that point home to me. But that's because every action has a reaction. Solo having his own adventure and working with Kira and the Cloud Riders, it affects the Empire, which pushes things down harder, which leads to Rogue One, it's all kind of connected, and I'm good with that. This is mythic storytelling, so you don't need it. It is outside of that, but the fact that this might lead directly to, as you said, the start of the Skywalker saga, not counting Shmi.
Yeah,
not counting Shmi. We don't know. There could be a Skywalker out there right now in the galaxy, but I'm fascinated by it. I think it's fun.
Yeah. I like this story, and I'm excited for Plagueis, and I think it's great. This does just feel like prove to us it can be done. Tell one story that is isolated, and it's not because I don't like the connections. I always end up loving the stories. I get kind of grumpy when people think the Mandalorian became a bad show because it brought in Luke and Ahsoka and Boba Fett. I do like that it's a shared universe, but I also think that the history and the scope of Star Wars is so wide. You could tell a really compelling story of Jedi who failed children, and you wouldn't have to. And I'm not really criticizing this story for bringing in Darth Plagueis. I'm putting a desire out into the universe for at least one Star Wars story that does truly tell its own contained story, to just show how rich that can be as well.
One day.
Here's my final Plagueis question. So, and this is just having fun speculating. So, Chimere has implied that he was rejected by both the Jedi and maybe a Sith. Now we know that he was Vernestra's student, a pupil who turned to evil. So, Ken, what do you think is actually going on with Plagueis? Do you think Plagueis cut Chimere loose and is just stalking around the cave because his old failed apprentice is up to some interesting stuff? Or do you think Plagueis is actively directing the stuff that Chimere is up to?
That's a great question. There could be some Palpatine and Maul during the Clone Wars vibes of, wait a minute, I cut you loose. What are you doing? I'm here to take care of that. And maybe Chimere was the acolyte and Plagueis is the apprentice, and Tenebris is still alive here, right? There's a lot of ways to go with it. I kind of took it as, I've taken it as Chimere being a little bit of a rebel, that he's been rejected by a lot of folks, so maybe he's trying to write his own story here, write his own ticket, and that I like your idea of Plagueis kind of being, oh, you thought I was done with you. No. This is a threat to me versus them just being master and apprentice. Because, and even if they are master and apprentice, Plagueis wasn't coming to drop off cookies. There's nothing about that.
Yeah, he had a vibe in the Force that his apprentice, his lonely boy, finally had a lady friend, and he had to check it out for himself. Jennifer, how do you feel about the relationship? Do you still feel that Chimera has been rejected by Plagueis, and Plagueis is checking in on him, or do you think they're active master apprentice?
I don't think so, based on how he was like stalking and lurking. I feel like
Creepy hand.
maybe there was kind of like, okay, fine, you do your own thing. That's what Plagueis is saying to Chimera, and Chimera believes it. And Plagueis, being the bad person that he is, or being, is like, I'm not letting you go. I'm always going to keep watch of you. I will be right there with you. So yeah, that will be explored in season 2.
We're virgin on a t-shirt that will be explored in season 2. But there's a reason we're excited for these ideas. Okay, let's talk about lightsaber bleeding in live action. Ken, so this was slightly different than it is in publishing.
Sure.
That in the books and the comics, it's usually been presented as a little bit more of a ritual, like with Vader and Ben Solo. There was a little bit, if I am remembering correctly, of an element of I am kind of proving to myself that I have rejected the light entirely, and I'm 1000% committed to this path. And this is more like she took the action and is almost shocked to see the result. Did you enjoy, multiple different interpretations of how this could go? And any other thoughts about the lightsaber?
Yeah. And didn't with Jedi Survivor had a version of it too? I think. I can't remember. I know you didn't.
I haven't played that one. Yeah.
Yeah. I actually liked it. I like the difference of it because I like the Vader ones. This like, oh no, you don't get a lightsaber. You got to go take one. And there's not a lot of Jedi in the galaxy. You go find one and take it and bleed it. And I know back in the day, the legends, the synthetic crystals and everything. I actually have always said I'm glad that kind of got changed. I'm glad that it's still organic, following the Gathering arc and everything in Clone Wars, where it's like, no, these crystals are speaking to you, they're connected to you. So the fact that a Sith user, a dark side user, who would go so far as to contaminate, it's not a synthetic recreation. It's the actual thing contaminated by your hate, your emotions. It's going. I can't control them, so I'm going to put them all into this blade. So to have it go from have versions that are very purposeful and ceremonial to have this one be like we're describing here today. Oopsie, crossed the line. Like she probably maybe had learned about that in school, maybe Jedi school, right? At the academy. I don't know if there's a bleed the blade. Be careful, because also they weren't sure if there was Sith around, right? Or definitely weren't teaching it. So the fact that she's like, what is happening here? Jen, you called it just the way it was played of blue turns to red right in front of her. And she maybe even in that moment doesn't fully understand. I like having different versions of a very organic concept.
Yeah. Jennifer, how did you feel about it in general? This was a powerful moment to you? You enjoyed it?
I loved it. I was like, when I saw the crystal in the lightsaber, that one shot of it, I was like, ooh, it's bleeding. Oh my gosh. Okay, we're going to see it. And then when we actually see her with the lightsaber, and like I said, the shock and horror of it all, it was so powerful because I can identify with a lot of what Osha's doing, right? It's like, okay, I see where you're coming from. I know why you're angry. I acknowledge that. But there comes a point where you cross that line. There is no gray. It is red or blue. And you crossed it. It is now red. You cannot go back. And I thought that was such a powerful statement where it's like, I can understand where she's coming from, but what she did was wrong. There is no wiggle room with that. And the blade is going to tell you. Like, you effed up. That's what should be on the t-shirt. You effed up.
This blade tells.
And that's what I like about the non-synthetic crystals too. They get to the same thing of that this is unnatural. But I like that it is the kyber crystals are naturally, light side affiliated. And we've certainly seen people do some dark side stuff with them. But that this perverting against the crystal's agency to make it something different, to dominate it. To say to the crystal, I'm high status now, and I'm going to make you be what I want to be. And the fact that I love that can be a purposeful ritual. And I love that was so in her actions and in her heart that she was doing that to the crystal, forcing it to be something it wouldn't want to be, without even fully realizing the choice she's making was really, really powerful. I also just thought it's I really want to compliment the show, because even though I'm wrestling with parts of it on a personal level, there are many elements of it that I think, just in terms of its sort of its structure and the way it is making sort of circles of things on purpose, I thought this was a great circle, from the beautiful moment where Soul presents that exact blade to her is a symbol of choice, freedom, agency, defending others, and that exact symbol of hope is turned into a weapon of death and a lie of freedom.
That's one of the
great.
The moments it's going to pick up some speed and meaning in the rewatch, and already has, just even talking about it, of he is literally presenting to her the weapon that she will kill him with. That's pretty powerful. That's something that will have different layers when played out again.
Yep. Moving on then to some other canon stuff. Hey, let's talk about our buddy Yoda. It was great to see the back of his head again, and it looked pretty puppety. I don't know, which I know Jennifer is excited about. So we have the question of, Vernestra is going to talk to him, and is she going to talk about, hey, we got a Sith problem? Is she going to talk to him about, hey, remember that student I lost, Chimere? What level of truth she's going to share with him is up there. How he's going to respond, that's for our t-shirt, revealed in season 2. But there was also this moment earlier where Vernestra is calling someone and says, I know he is, but I need to get a message to him. It's urgent. And the voice says, this is highly unorthodox, but I shall see what I can do. Jennifer, how do you feel about that moment of dialogue? Is that about Yoda? Where do you think things are going with Yoda in a season 2?
I 100% after that, I was like, oh, are we going to see Yoda? We're going to see Yoda. And there was a big canon swing right there, right? Where they did it. We all were asking the question, he's around, where is he? And they showed it to us in, I believe, puppet form. Thank the maker for that. And the little detail of his ears moving, I just thought was so brilliant. But I believe that she's going to him because she needs help. She needs advice. She needs his wisdom. And I think she is going to say, we have a Sith problem. And oh yeah, my former apprentice went rogue. I think that she's going to come clean. That's what I hope.
Yeah, I hope so too. Because I think when she's telling that story of Soul, this rogue Jedi, and the sadness and the pain of losing him, I feel like she's saying it wasn't actually a rogue Jedi, my rogue Jedi Chimere, and I am blaming it on this. Soul made a lot of mistakes, but he didn't really go rogue, and he certainly didn't slaughter a bunch of Jedi. So yeah, that powerful stuff. Ken, how do you feel about the Yoda of it all? How do you feel about those earlier lines that I think are going to keep people speculating?
Of her, the communication?
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, I got hung up the first viewing of that. It sounded like a young Palpatine was answering her, and I don't think it is. But I literally was like, wait, what's going on? How old is Palpatine? Did he change that?
Yeah, is that Office Assistant Palpatine?
Yeah. I just started my job here at the Republic. I'm answering phones. I love the use of Yoda in this capacity. Half point for people out there who kept predicting that Yoda would be in this series. Technically, you're right. I still think it was a series outside of the character, and I'm very actually happy with that. But I like this. It makes sense. Again, it's kind of like you talk about Luke, a Mandalorian. That made sense for who was there at that time to fit that character's needs, not the plot, but the character's needs. This is who Vernestra will be go to, and unless you're an Oppo Rensis fan. But I want her to kind of come clean to Yoda, and maybe he'll say, Caddy Mundi, we must not tell. Maybe that's part of it too. But it's just a matter of, like I said, what level of truth, what amount of truth is she going to tell him? But with the connection of over 100 years to him, and having worked through the Nile and all the things there that are still at play now in Phase 3, I think she would have a more honest connection with him.
Yeah, I feel like I know he is, but I need to get a message to him. It's urgent. Is her trying to contact Yoda? And I think functionally, when you're watching the episode, I think it is probably trying to keep fans guessing that maybe she is, a secret Sith Lord, because everybody did seem to pull that. And there are some moments in this episode that were like, what's she feeling? What she's doing? But once the Yoda reveal was there, I feel like, yeah, absolutely, she's calling Yoda. And for me, I do feel like it's playing around in the Phantom Menace sandbox that Ki-Adi-Mundi is certain that the Sith have been extinct for a millennia, and but Yoda seems aware of the rule of two, and it feels like it's playing in that area.
Yeah, and all this discussion about it, and some of the bad faith arguments about what they're just ignoring this line. No, clearly they weren't. And I think if you watch that scene, even in Phantom Menace, like, Yoda doesn't say, right, he is. He doesn't. He doesn't. Yoda's the same character who a little bit later on is like, yeah, there's a lot of hubris going around the Jedi Order this day. We're certain of a lot of things, and that, whether or not he's specifically meaning that, it's just like you said, a sandbox you can play around with.
There are a couple other little canon things. Vernestra specifically had the quote to Raincourt that her problem in hyperspace is not her stomach, but her head, talking more specifically about those visions that she has in the publishing side of things. We've now had multiple characters predicting the exact tragedy of the prequels with Senator Raincourt's line about rogue Jedi who can't be stopped, and Mother Anastaea's line last week about noble intentions. We also had some just straight up kind of rhyming lines with other parts of the saga. Strike him down and your journey will be complete, Chimere says to May. And Vernestra says about Chimere, pupil of mine before he turned to evil. Jennifer, how do you feel about some of those kind of direct rhyming lines?
I really liked them. And they did not feel redundant, or I don't know, there was a newness to them, even though they were obviously very, very familiar. And I can't pinpoint why. I'll need to think about that.
Yeah, with the Sith, I almost always like a little repetition, because I think that's a part of the critique of evil is it gets repetitive. And they do the graphic design on their Sith pamphlets a little different, but the message in the pamphlet is almost always the same. So I like that similarity. Ken, how did you feel about it in the pupil of mine before he turned to evil in particular?
Yeah, I liked it. I like Chimere quoting the throne. It's like he had watched Return of the Jedi and memorized it. I like all that, and I do. I guess I just again I want to highlight that I love David Harwood's performance. I want to highlight how much I just don't like Raincourt. I'd argue you're wrong, sir. I'd argue that a rogue Jedi was stopped on the shores of Mustafar, but his life was unnaturally extended by a force of evil. Oh, the same one who actually wiped out the Jedi, not with Jedi, with clones and a Phantom Menace of a plan. So I don't know if he's right, but I also get, along with Mother Anastaea, the kind of call forward, and it makes a lot of sense. I'm having fun with that idea out there, internet land. But I liked it all. I really specifically like the Chimere stuff.
Yeah, me too. All right, I don't think there's any other major canon stuff, and we spent a lot of time on the old theme. So moving on to any favorite specific moments that we want to highlight. I thought there's, like I said at the top, I thought this was thematically rich, and I thought there was a lot of great moments of action and shots and line delivery. Jennifer, what were some favorite moments that jumped out to you?
The action sequence in particular was really thrilling to watch. I was like, oh, I wish I remembered all of Leslie Headland. She had mentioned like her inspirations, because I think some of them were some samurai films, and I would love to go back and watch those now. It just felt cinematic, it felt epic, it felt Star Wars, and yet not. It took it back to the origins of Star Wars and perhaps what George was inspired by. Just so many things. The Matrix, right? Like all these inspirations came together and just really, I think some of the best action sequence, best fighting sequences that we've gotten in Star Wars ever. I'm gonna say that.
Yeah, I think for some of the action, she referenced the studio Shaw Brothers, which did a bunch of kind of seminal martial arts films, and I got a chance to see one of them on a recommendation of one of our Force Center listeners, and really enjoyed it. So yeah, Soul and Chimera's fight was just, it had great emotion and great invention. I love the shot of the lightsaber cutting through the hallway, so we could see them pushing through there. Soul's slow-mo triple kick to Chimera, the triumphant music, all of it was so great. Like, you're watching it and you kind of know this is not going to work out for Soul. And I was on the edge of my seat. I kept waiting for him to die, because I kind of felt like he's not going to make it out. And then a great, just like in part 5, a great use of the action to heighten the emotional stakes of this is not going to work out for Soul, but he keeps winning in this fight in an amazing way. And I think it's so set up that the great following through on the promise of can't be killed by a weapon, and sets up the tragedy of what happens, how he dies, and why, and who kills him and how, is all set up through how awesome Soul is in this fight. Ken, do you have any thoughts in particular on the fight?
Yeah, I loved it. In pro wrestling terms, it was a screw job finish for Soul, where he got the win. He won. He defeated Chimera, took his weapon, and who knows what would have happened, but a little screw job ending. Someone else runs in on the match and gets the win. So I loved it, though. I think this series has succeeded all the way through, from the first moment, from the opening episode to the big fight in the episode night to this one. But this was my favorite fight. I think it was just shot so beautifully. It just, again, I use cinematic, you use cinematic. Jen, that can be a word that loses meaning over time, but I just think it worked. I don't always need Star Wars to feel like it's on the big screen and I'm in a theater eating popcorn, but this just there's some real great epic shots in this, and the color, the lighting, everything just worked, and it was some of my favorite stuff. And I thought it was brilliant. Thought it was wonderful. And I liked the May and Osha fight as well. Two halves fighting, over one soul, so to speak, and mirroring the moves and everything about it. Thought that was intriguing. There was thematic reasonings for all these fights, and all the way through the series, of course. But yeah, some of my favorite stuff there was the fights.
Yeah, I really liked the Osha and May fight as well, how it was cut with the Soul and Chimera fight. And I really like that one phrase where they were doing the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it reinforces they're the same person, but I also think it kind of reinforces this tragedy where they've been on these entirely different paths. They were both trained, by their mothers, by their coven, but then they went way over here to the Sith training, way over here to Jedi training, and somehow they're still coming back to these matching moves despite all these different paths. Jennifer, any thoughts on that fight or other moments you loved?
I think that, what I wanted to say was that one of the criticisms I've had with some of the Star Wars series recently, except for Andor, is that the fight sequences is when I tune out. It is when I go to my phone. It is when I get distracted, or sometimes if I'm short on time, I might even scrub through it because I just got to get to it. I'm like, I know it's going to happen. This, for all the fight sequences in every episode, like you're saying, I was gripped. I was at the edge of my seat, even though I know what's going to happen. But it's a combination of the way it's shot, the choreography of the fight, the incredible stunt performers, and the actors themselves who have trained. And we've been seeing behind the scenes videos of Daphne Keane and of Charlie Barnett and of Manny Jacinto. And it's like they went hard on their training, right? And so it's like all these things combined with the incredible music and the stakes. And I feel like this show, time and time again, there were stakes in all of these fight sequences. And with the Osha and the May sequence, it's like, oh, these are two sisters fighting it out, right? So I just thought that's why I was always gripped every single time, as opposed to a lot of other like sequences.
Any other moments that you wanted to shout out, Jen?
No, just I think I just love everything about it. I just love everything about it. The music, the spirit of the witches, hearing that kind of music, their chorus like haunting. And I was like, maybe they're still alive. Yoda's ears, the details, the thumb caress, like all these little moments which they captured and really say so much. No detail was overlooked. And I love that.
Ken, any other moments for you?
Love the ship chase, the spaceship chase in the beginning, something that had been in the trailer, but now to see it full, I loved it. Just going through the rings. Basil makes, a decision. Our friend Brian Ward tweeted out something about the character of Basil, of how Brian's like, I feel he's in his own show and he's doing his own things. I would like a Disney Plus one-off movie on Basil's adventures where he's just like he's just figuring everything out on his own. You just cut it. You don't even need to see the other characters. He's just doing it all on his own. But that ended that sequence. But I absolutely loved it. I thought it was one of the best space fighting, if you will, sequences in the series.
Yeah, I thought it was great in terms of meaning too. Of like, Soul is not letting this go.
Yeah,
like he needs to resolve this one way or another, kind of thing. I think Basil is Darth Tenebris. I think that explains all of his actions.
He might.
Yeah, it's an illusion. A couple other moments I liked. I really liked Soul's emotional victory of just accepting. Yeah, you don't want to hear anything about the justification. You don't want to hear the misunderstanding that led me to killing Mother Anna. Say what you need to hear right now is just the truth. And I will. He played it so well. He's been such a just phenomenal performer throughout this, and I think that moment was just incredibly powerful. A couple other little ones. I did really like Ernesto Force opening the door at the end of the conversation. Is that all, Senator? It's just a great get the bleep out of here. And then I don't want to overlook the very beginning. We had all sort of speculation of what was going to happen to Osha in that sensory deprivation helmet. And there's also been a lot of talk about her great power, and seeing that some of her power is of her mother, of the witches, that when she, is overwhelmed and lets go, she starts to use her mother's power, her inherited power, not maybe her learned or taught power or way of using the Force that she might have learned from the Jedi. But that's where it is naturally going with the taking Soul over. And I just love the visual language that it created for being taken over, where everything is a normal color and then goes to this harsh blue in the character's mind, and then cutting back to his eyes fully black, like old Torben there. I thought the visual language of that was great.
Yeah, I thought it was a good sequence, and I liked that he had he immediately. He went from like, hey, you tried to, oh God, like I was playing, showed some care. He's got some care. He's a lonely boy. He doesn't want to lose his friend. Yeah, I like that moment too. Good to call it out.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, it very much is like, I got the Acolyte. I can manipulate her. Yeah, I am afraid of her too, because I know what she can do to me. All right, Jennifer, I feel like you already answered this question with your impassioned compliments of the show and all of its attention to detail. But was there anything that you disliked, questioned, struggled with in this big finale?
No, except that I would have liked an announcement of a season 2. I think that would be really helpful for all of us. No, I can't really think of anything. There were times where I had to like reorient myself on like, wait, is this May? Is this Osha? And that's the point, right? Where it's like Amanda, oh my goodness, phenomenal acting to be able to portray these two characters while wearing the costumes of the other character. It was at times like, oh, who's who? Oh, that's right. But Amanda always made it very clear with her performance who the character was. And so although that was really effective, it wasn't something I disliked, but it did take me a couple moments to be like, okay, wait, who's who again? Oh, that's right. But yeah, no, I loved everything. Didn't question everything.
Ken?
Yeah, no, that on that particular point, this is some of the best. They handled it the best in this episode, I thought, and then some of the other episodes where I've too had to be like, okay, light outfit, dark soul, dark outfit, light soul. But that's also that disoriented feeling might be part of what they're going for here. The designs on the outfits, everything worked for me. Yeah, but anyways, I don't want to cut off Jen from any more thoughts there.
Nope, that was it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, there's a lot of rich stuff to discuss in the show. We talked about it a little bit, but that we've talked about a lot over the weeks that there's so much about the duality, but then also I think an effort to say it's never as simple as that. I think, Jennifer, as you've been saying, I think this is an effort to take Star Wars and be a little bit more deeply realistic with it. Not that there's an emotional truth in all of Star Wars. I think that's why it's powerful. But I do like that, it wasn't just May is in the light colored costume now. May has switched places with Osha. May is good. I think it was this great statement on truth that May got vengeance. May killed Indara and watched a saddled man drink poison, and I don't think she got what she needed. And I think it brought her to that place that she was in where she said, I want truth. I want the entire galaxy to know what you did. And I want you to take true responsibility. So that wasn't a dislike. That was a like. I don't think there's anything that I haven't talked about that I disliked or questioned. Some of it is the season 2 thing. I think I really am practicing what we preach of engage the story with the story that we're presented with. And I love the story that we're told. I have to be honest that I am a little challenged of I'm happy to have shows that are different in Star Wars. I am happy that Jedi and heroes are criticized, but I think at the end of the day, for myself personally, I want a little bit more of a drop of hope, even in the most dark and realistic takes on Star Wars. I want just a little bit more hope than what I felt in this finale. And I guess where the hope lives is in me wanting a season 2, hoping for a season 2. So there, I found my hope. Star Wars counseled myself. Ken, anything else from you?
This series succeeded in one big way for me. It spawned and spurned so many conversations and questions and discussions. Great ones here. Jen, your perspective has been valuable, not just in terms of a podcast, but to me as a human. And I'm sure Joseph would echo that as well. Like, it's been fun to discuss this from all different eyes. I do think this series did a great job of taking a look at the Jedi from a lot of different perspectives and explain how their slide was happening and maybe even beginning. And I just wish it was more clear at times that the ideals that they try to upload are still valuable. It's still valuable in story and maybe in our own world. I think we're kind of left with a galaxy full of hungry politicians trying to disrobe the Jedi and a bunch of villains saying, it's okay, get angry, stay angry, kill while you're angry. It's a good thing. And that can be bleak, and maybe it's what you take into it and what's going on in your own life or what's going on in the world. Season 1 of House of the Dragon was too bleak for me. It had no ounce of joy. It had no fighting over chicken wings with the Hound and Arya. And I don't gravitate. I didn't gravitate towards it at that time. Season 2 House of the Dragon is doing different things. This show has that kind of feel for me where I think it's bleak, but that's true to the timeline, and it's true to the Star Wars story where we are right now. We're 100 years out from the Phantom Menace, and the fall is starting, and we slide into a darkness, and I think that just makes me want to go watch A New Hope. It maybe makes me want to watch Where the Light Side Returns, and we have those stories. And those stories aren't gone. This story actually adds to that in the end. So even I have some of the same issues you've expressed, Joseph. I know where this takes us, and that's hopeful enough for me. And also, I'm looking forward to, whenever we'll get it, Skeleton Crew, where 4 kids just go out and find a plucky round of adventure and pirates, and we'll see what happens. Not that I don't think Star Wars can't get a little dark and ask the tough questions. It can roam around in the gray area, but much like the blade of a soul in Osha's hands, a choice eventually is made. And this series made a darker choice, and I respect the artist for that. And I'll move forward from there and just keep discussing it.
Yeah, and Ken, you said multiple times that you enjoy the show, but you really, really enjoy discussing the show. And I think that's a great way to look at, how art can be impactful, because I think the show is so making an argument of we cling to these various truths. And, even when we are making mistakes, we are sometimes so certain that we're right. And even with the best intentions, we can make mistakes. So then how do you handle that? How do you try to make things right and move forward? I think is a hopeful message. I think Jackie's line is a hopeful message about not defining yourself by what you lose, but by what you survive. But I also think it can be hopeful in the way that we discuss things, that we don't have to have a duality. We don't have to be thumbs up and thumbs down like these characters. We can acknowledge that we are, affected by our truths and try to deal with them honestly and express our truths to one another honestly, and do a better job than some of the characters in the show did of having honest and nuanced conversations about our truths. I feel like we've probably talked about anything that we wanted to touch on, but is there anything else that you wanted to touch on, Jennifer?
So something that really is important about this show is it's about power. Who gets to wield this power? And when I look at it from a fan and also just from a business perspective, I have to shout out Lucasfilm and Disney for giving power to creators, people behind the scenes, people in front of the camera who oftentimes do not get access to that power. I cannot tell you how many times as an actor I would not get a part because they're like, well, we're not going ethnic. Well, what does that mean? You mean that the default is just automatically going to always be white actors? Or it's like, we only have room for one person of color, one person out of a cast of, however many, or you get to have one or two lines because we need that diversity quota. That is, to me, is what shoehorning diversity and inclusion is. This show was a proper representation of inclusivity because it allowed these actors, these creators, the writers to just tell a damn good story, to just flesh out these characters who were compelling, who went on these incredible journeys. And they just got to exist in the future a long time ago, which for so long in fantasy and unfortunately in Star Wars, we have not seen ourselves. But oh my gosh, like I could get emotional. And I just think about what it would have been like as a child to be able to see this and how many generations of fans and creators have been influenced by the things that we saw as kids that made them believe that the impossible was possible. If I had seen this as a kid, who knows what I would have believed, because it really was seeing the impossible being possible on so many levels, both creatively and just in a fantastical way. So thank you, Lucasfilm.
It was great to see so much behind the scenes, so much with the humans on the screen, and have all of it be nuanced and complex, and this very sort of, to me, human message of we all contain multitudes, and in art we can all express multitudes, and we don't have to be in a box, which is a powerful human message to me. Ken, anything that we haven't talked about that you wanted to touch on?
No, Jennifer, there was beautiful words, and why I do have in the end so much respect for the series and the people behind it. And like you said, those with power, passing that power around, and then Leslie, as she said before, sending that elevator back down to the lobby to pull everyone else up with her. I think that's powerful. That's more in line with the Star Wars message overall in the history. Yes.
Well, let's segue.
But yeah.
Let's segue from that great depth to action figures or toys or merch. We always like to end with a fun question. So, Ken, if you could have any figure or merch or anything from this episode, who or what do you want?
Come on. I have him hanging on my wall over there. I have a Darth Plagueis action figure. Now I want Darth Plagueis lurking in a cave. I want the play set. The fingers, I want that. Give me that.
I want a standee that you can just attach to your own like bathroom door of just the little hand in the beak. Darth Plagueis behind it all. Who used the last of the shampoo? It was Darth Plagueis after all. So Darth Plagueis standee. And eventually the Jedi Master Soul action figure I pre-ordered months ago will show up. And I'll have a relationship with that. Also, formal wear Vern would be great. I love to dress at the end. Anyway, Jennifer, if you could have merch from this episode, what would you want?
I mean, we already said it. Explained in season 2. It's got to be like that Star Wars font, right? It's got to be it.
I think it is flying off the internet printing presses as we speak. All right, that is it. I have become plunged in Norwegian darkness, so it is time for us to wrap up. Ken, do you want to take us home?
Well done, sir. It's it's a hard task to work while on vacation and to pull off international StreamYard connectivity. This is we're ForceCenter. Hi, we're ForceCenter. Thanks for following us. Thanks for maybe joining the journey during the Acolyte. We can be found on social media at ForceCenter Pod. We're on Instagram, YouTube as well. Subscribe over here if you'd like. We are still growing here, and we're happy to do so. But the podcast has always been our home, and you can search for the podcast anywhere podcasts are or where they're still at. Just search, find us. If we're not there, let us know. You can get merch at tpublic.com/user/ForceCenter. And you can support us directly at patreon.com/ForceCenter. Follow me at Ken Napzok or go to my website, kennapzok.com, for more. Jen, where can they find and follow you?
You can find me all over social media at Jennifer Landa. Thank you to those of you who have checked out my channel. Thanks to you, Ken. That's been fun. My YouTube channel, that is. I'm also on TikTok.
I actually want to apologize.
Why?
I
It's
mentioned
awesome.
I mentioned the dancing at Union Station, and I've had several people go, I looked up that video. I didn't know. So I hope yes, more views. But I was like, I don't know. Maybe Jennifer didn't want me to. Maybe I shouldn't have said anything.
No,
Maybe
I
shouldn't have said
appreciate
anything.
it. I'm like, oh, there's some activity happening. All right. So yeah, thanks for joining me. Did I say TikTok at Jennifer Landa 1138? Yeah. Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
there you
Bye.
go. There you go. Bye-bye. Joseph, you got some great pictures of goats in Norway going on your Instagram right now. Where can they find and follow you and a lot more?
Yeah, there could be some more pictures of goats, probably a lot of pictures of trolls. So many trolls. It's found the best troll in the troll forest. Anyway, having quite the adventure, the mythic adventure here in Norway. But you can find me on all the social media at Joseph Scrimshaw, and you can check out my website, josephscrimshaw.com. For upcoming screenings of short films like The Nightmare Adorable. We recently won an award for most over-the-top death. I'll take it. I'll take awards that I can get. And I have a big show coming up called Horror Years Old. It is a comedy variety show about aging because I'm turning a big number and I'm doing a show to celebrate. Ken's going to be on the show, a bunch of friends of ForceCenter as well. And it's going to be live streamed so you can watch it from anywhere on the internet. If you're interested, there's a big ticket link on my website, josephscrimshaw.com. That is it. This has been the Acolyte Report.